All right, week 9 of the college football season is upon us. Couple of games already this week, but some huge matchups coming up this weekend. Some ACC battles, some Big 12 battles, not to mention the Pac 12. A lot going on. And we're going to break down a couple of these big games coming up and talk some best bets here with two of our favorites here on the college football show. We got Steve Double R1L Steve Merrill and Jeff Michaels ready to roll here, and kicking it off is going to be Steve Merrill, and we are Merrill. Well, we are going to talk a little, well, I don't know what you call it, independent versus ACC, I guess, as Notre Dame taking on Pittsburgh. Pitt coming off just a horrific last 60-second loss there. I'm still not quite sure how they lost to Wake, but they did. And now they got to take on Notre Dame. Not great news for Pat Narduzzi, or is it?
I think the situational setup here for Notre Dame is really good. And it's funny, if it wasn't for the bye week, I'd be saying the exact opposite because when they play, what was it, Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC, and then you are at Clemson after that, you'd be like, boy, is this a flat spot for nearly a 3-touchdown home favorite. But it's not because Notre Dame had a bye week last week and it came at a textbook perfect time for them after those 4 hard-fought games. And they're still a really good team this season. In fact, this is a team that's above average statistically on both sides of the ball. Rank them top 10, top 15 in all categories on both sides of the ball. Let's not forget the Ohio State loss came on the final play at the goal line with just 10 guys on the field. The Louisville loss I thought was a terrible spot. In fact, I had a best bet on Louisville. But let's not give Pitt too much credit for their win the following week against Louisville because Pittsburgh caught Louisville at the perfect time after Louisville had just pulled off the Notre Dame upset. In fact, if you take out that fortunate win against Louisville, Pitt has gone 0-5 straight up in ATS in all other games going back to their week 1 win against mighty Wofford on September 2nd. So I do think this is a focus spot for Notre Dame. I did a standalone video earlier this week on Monday, and I said I'd like the setup for Notre Dame, but I didn't have my database simulation ready yet because it takes several days for it to run to 10,000 games. So I wanted to refocus on the game here on Thursday. Database simulations favors Notre Dame by 23 on average.
Hmm.
So at 20.5 or less, there's still good line value with Notre Dame, and I think the situation supports them as well.
All right, looking for Notre Dame to handle business in that one here. And Jeff, before we get you in here, because I'm going to be interested on what to do. I just don't know what to do with one of these teams here, but I do want to remind you guys, if you are new here to Wager Talk TV and the College Football Kickoff Show, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, because if it is college football content you want with game previews as well as more best bets with all the action coming up in this week 9, yeah, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, become part of the family here at Wager Talk TV. Nobody's got more than we do when it comes to college football content. Now, what do we do, Jeff, here with this Louisville team here? We just talked about them there. Merrill referenced the game a couple of weeks ago. Now they got to welcome in Duke, who's still trying to figure out where it went wrong there against Florida State. Leonard maybe go, probably not a go with the ankle injury. So is it just as simple as that? You can't play Duke without him?
Me and Steve were actually talking earlier, and he played for a minute last week. Granted, he
Hmm.
re-injured that ankle, and it does look like he's going to miss this week. But even if he comes back and plays, I'm not convinced. You look at what he did last week. I mean, he made 16 pass attempts. He wasn't playing the whole game, obviously, but in those 16 pass attempts, he only completed 7 passes. And he threw an interception. I mean, over the last 2 weeks, this Duke offense has passed for a combined 183 yards. So one
Hmm.
of those was against NC State with the backup quarterback, but Riley came in and didn't look, insanely impressive there. This Duke team started 4-0 and everybody was talking about them, and now they've dropped 2 out of the last 3. And I do like this spot for Louisville here because they had a couple of those upset wins, obviously, but they're coming off their first loss of the season too, and they've been absolutely dominant at home. They're 3-0 straight up and against the spread at home this season. But you look at the differential between home and away, At home, they're putting up 122 more yards per game, and they're actually doubling their points per game. They're putting up 48 points per game at home and putting up just 24 points per game on the road. I mean, they're averaging 96 yards per game above what opposing defenses are allowing on average. That's top 10 in the country. And
Mm.
even in their loss last week, or in their most recent game to Pitt, they still put up more yards than any opponent that Pitt has faced this season. They put up 444 yards in that game. They were plus 156 yards in the yardage differential, and they still lost by 17. Now, I know that looks like a bad loss, but like I said, I do still like Louisville here. They're 8-0 in the last 2 years coming off an ATS loss, and they're 7-0 against the spread in the last 2 years, playing at home on Saturdays. So I do think their rush defense stands up against Duke's rush offense here, excuse me. And I think we're going to see another game of limited pass attack from Duke. So I'm backing the Cardinals in this one.
All right, taking Louisville to get it done in that big ACC matchup here. Both teams trying to get to some bowl games and maybe even more than that here. But they got to start winning some games here as we are heading into this week 9 of the college football season. Now we do have a couple of best bets coming up here, guys. All right, taking Louisville to get it done in that big ACC matchup here. Both teams trying to get to some bowl games and maybe even more than that here. But they got to start winning some games here as we are heading into this week 9 of the college football season. Now we do have a couple of best bets coming up here, guys. And if you do have any questions about the games they just talked about or any of the games on the board here this week, drop those questions, drop the comments into that comment section here. Steve Merrill as well as Jeff Michaels will be keeping an eye on it. They will answer you back. So if you got any questions about this week's games, drop them in the comment section. They'll get back to you here as best bet time. And Merrill, you're going out west, I believe they say. And you're going to take, I can't believe you're going to go with Dion. So UCLA taking on Dion. Boy, oh boy, it's kind of a mixed bag for the first year for Dion here. What are you going to do? You going to take the points or lay the points with UCLA?
Well, 6 games for this weekend. This was not one of them though, because it did not qualify. But I do think there's some line value with UCLA as I make them a 24-point favorite on average through my simulation. So at 17 or less, there is some line value obviously on that key number. So let's dig a little bit deeper and see if we can find a reason to back them as well. On the surface, I do think the bye came at a really good time for Colorado after they blew the big double-digit lead on primetime. Primetime on primetime blew the lead a couple Fridays ago, and they ended up losing 46-43 against Stanford. And boy, can a loss like that linger, especially as a double-digit national TV favorite. So I'd like it even more if they weren't off the bye week, but I'm still not sure the bye is going to fix what has been a really bad defense at times this season. In fact, they're now giving up 36 points a game, which ranks 127th in the country out of 133 teams. They're giving up 316 passing yards per game, which is 133rd in the country. And rushing, they're still 90th. So this is a bad defense no matter how you cut it, even though they face some tough opponents. And UCLA has been below average overall offensively this year, but you do have to wonder, was that a breakout game for them against Stanford last week? 32 first downs and 503 total yards. Now, I will say Stanford was probably a little flat after that come from behind win against Colorado, so you see what I'm talking about. But UCLA still looked really good offensively. I think Kelly's offense is starting to click, and they're catching Colorado at a good time. And no matter how you cut it, there's a huge defensive edge for UCLA. They've been very good defensively this year, just 15 points per game allowed, just 4.5 yards per play. So I think UCLA is probably as good, if not better, right now offensively. I know that's a weird statement because Colorado looks really explosive, but UCLA is averaging 6.3 yards per play this year. Colorado's averaging just 5.7, and we know UCLA is by far the much better defense, and we get some line value. So take a look at UCLA. Public is still keeping these lines low with Colorado, and we'll fade them this week. UCLA Bruins worth a look, and don't forget, basketball is here. I cashed my first NBA best bet of the season on Wednesday night, a 23-point blowout with a 5-point favorite. And we're now up 30 net games since January 1st this calendar year in the NBA, and also college and pro football in full swing, Major League Baseball World Series. Check out an all sports, all access special for as low as $3 a day on my page with special promo codes. Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com.
All right, good stuff there, Steve. Best bet UCLA there taking on the Buffaloes of Colorado. And now, Jeff, Big 12 is where we're heading for your best bet. And I believe there's homecoming this weekend in Waco with the Baylor Bears as they welcome in Iowa State. But how far has Baylor fallen that homecoming? And there's still a dog here of 2.5 points. Are you biting? Is it a home dog for you, or do you think Iowa State handles business?
Looking at how Baylor has played at home, they might want to take their homecoming game and go play at Iowa State and call it homecoming, to be honest. I talked about in that big game breakdown, I talked about Louisville and how they've played at home. Excuse me, how they played at home. Well, let's take this Baylor team and basically look at the exact opposite. I mean, Baylor at home, 0-4 straight up, 0-3 against the spread. They're only putting up 16 points per game, and they're allowing nearly 35 points per game. So a homecoming may be more beneficial on the road this season, and they have to take on an Iowa State team that has been the most dominant defense in this conference. I mean, they're number one in the conference in total defense allowed. And on the road, I mean, they're fourth in the nation, holding teams 118 yards below their season average. But the most impressive part about that, it includes their game against Oklahoma there. But, one thing that really stood out to me, I know Cincinnati may not be the team we're looking at, and Cincinnati's welcome to the Big 12, but both these teams actually played their most recent game at Cincinnati at Nipper. They had a bye week in between, but Iowa State was actually the bigger underdog in that Cincinnati game, and they held Cincinnati to just 10 points, and they won by 20 as a 4-point dog. Baylor was a 2.5-point dog in the situation. They pulled out the win there, but they allowed 29 points to that Cincinnati team and only squeaked away with a 3-point win. So not a whole lot of change there between the situations of that game. Same site, same opponent, and within a week of each other. So I do think that that's a pretty good comparison that we're going to see there. And Iowa State didn't look great to start the year, but hey, since conference play has kicked off, 3-1 straight up and against the spread, they are putting up almost 28 points per game, and the defense is allowing just 25 points per game. But you look at the conference that they're in, you look at Baylor's defense, who is allowing over 35 points per game against these conference opponents. I don't think this is going to be one of the more exciting homecoming games for Baylor. I'm backing Iowa State in this one, laying 2.5.
It's funny, in many aspects, it's like Baylor has turned into Iowa State. We're like, oh, well, there's always next year, like one more recruiting class. And it's like, wow, how Dave Aranda and Baylor Bears have fallen. Unbelievable here, but good opportunity for Iowa State to get exact a little revenge here and get it done on the road. And there you have it. We got a couple of big game breakdowns, a couple of best bets, but we're not done yet. As college football week 9, still plenty of games to break down for you. And if you click on that video right there on the screen, you'll have access to all the other top 25 videos and all the college football content you need to make it a profitable week 9. Come back and join us again tomorrow for the Friday edition of the College Football Kickoff Show. Until then, best of luck with all your plays. We'll talk to you again soon.